Yeah, so you get 2 for 1 in this talk, and it means that we're going to have to make sure that we keep on time. So I'm Rob Raine. I'm the energy geologist at GSNI. I work with another guy, Derek Ray, who's also involved with energy and geothermal. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the resource potential in Northern Ireland for geothermal. And on the front slide, you'll see an obligatory shot of Northern Ireland's UNESCO World Heritage Site, the Giant's Causeway, just to highlight that Northern Ireland used to be a volcanic centre, would have had hot pools, bubbling mud springs, probably geysers as well. But since then, since 60 million years, it has cooled down, and we're dealing with lower temperatures in the order of up to about 110 degrees. So it's a much more volcanically quiet place. So just to give you a summary, what is geothermal? And you'll probably be hearing a lot more about that in future talks. But geothermal is energy in the form of heat that is stored in the ground beneath us, and it can be accessed in a number of ways. And in general, the deeper you go, the hotter you get. So with deeper, hotter resources, they can be used for power generation, and the shallower resources that are cooler can be used for home heating, industrial processes, fish farming, thermal spas, things like that. So here's a summary of a lot of the different uses that you can use geothermal for. In Northern Ireland, the geothermal resource is classed as low enthalpy, which means it's typically beneath 150 degrees. And the reservoirs that we have would be suitable for the most part for district heating, and then the shallower reservoirs for use with heat pump. So the very shallow geothermal, or what many people know as ground source, is accessible across pretty much all of Northern Ireland to varying degrees, but understanding the thermal conductivity of the shallow sediments is really crucial. So saturated sands, because they have the water in the space between the grains, are more thermally conductive than a dry sediment. And then when you go into the deeper rocks beneath the superficial sediments, Northern Ireland has prospectivity for open loop systems in porous and permeable rocks. They're shown in the light blue. And the other areas where the rocks don't have the space between grains would be suitable for closed loop systems. So one of those areas that would be very suitable for open loop systems lies underneath Belfast and a large part of Lisbon and Newton Abbey. So it's a fantastic potential resource, and Joe's going to talk about it a bit more in the following slides. Northern Ireland does have some areas of abandoned mines. We have in excess of 2,000 disused mines across Northern Ireland, and 2 of those areas are historic coal mining areas. So this is something that's being explored in GB a lot more, and a lot of the mining areas in GB underlie large cities, so there's great potential there, and the mines are a bit deeper in GB than they are over here. But there is some potential that has not yet been very well explored, because the nearby boreholes that we have a higher geothermal gradient than the mines over in GB. When it comes to deeper resources, it's key to understand not only the temperature that we have at depth, but also the heat flow. So how is that heat able to flow through the crust? And the heat at several kilometers depth can be modeled. So we can see that a large part of Northern Ireland has a very high temperature, and these maps are based at about 2.5 kilometers. Then one other area of potential is the granites down in the Mournes and other buried granites that we may have under the cover rocks in Northern Ireland. If those granites are high heat flow granites, then they actually generate their own heat, and they can be used in hot dry rock geothermal systems. But perhaps the biggest potential in Northern Ireland is a series of hot sedimentary aquifers. So those are buried deeply in areas across Northern Ireland where we have kilometers and kilometers of sandstones, mudstones, and limestones. And if you can get the right depth with a sandstone that has both porosity and permeability, then that can be a geothermal reservoir. And previously, this has been tested through deep drilling. There was a borehole which was actually looking for coal in 1979, but it found geothermal resources and waters of 60 degrees centigrade at about 2 kilometers. And since then, there was a geothermal exploration program which drilled our deepest borehole in Northern Ireland to 2.8 kilometers, and at the base of that found waters of 91 degrees centigrade. And since then, we've also had boreholes that have proven that the resource at that kind of depth can be almost 100 degrees, if not more. So the reservoir that we know most about is the Sherwood sandstone. So those are Triassic in age, and they can be fairly well mapped across Northern Ireland. And 5 areas are fairly prospective, but we know from geophysical results that underneath that there are a series of other reservoirs that would be hotter in temperature and therefore could be an additional resource. So I'm going to hand over to Joe for the next part of the talk. He's going to talk about his PhD project.
All right, Rob, thanks very much. You're right about the 2-for-1, sort of feels like the Batman and Robin of geothermal or something. But yeah, so my name's Joseph Ireland. I'm a PhD student at Queen's in Belfast. I'm looking at the aquifer thermal energy storage. I have 2 supervisors actually, Rick and John Barry, who you've already heard from. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And I was just thinking there about on reflection of this year and how difficult it's been on a sort of global scale, but it's wonderful that so many people are dialing in today. There was like 320 people registered, so it shows the resilience of us human beings on our need for growth and progress and to build back better. So it's yeah, thanks everyone for coming along. Hey Rob, have I got control to click here? Right? Yep. So what is aquifer thermal energy storage? I did a good bit of surfing on the internet yesterday, but decided just to sketch my own project or own picture of it, sort of thing. It's basically like we produce a lot of waste heat, whether we're cooling buildings, whether it's industrial processes, whether it's data centers or anything like that. So there's a lot of waste heat produced, and we don't use it anywhere. So we can actually store it beneath the ground. Hey, Rob, that clicked on. Can you click it back? Maybe hold on. Maybe just. I don't know what happened there. Yeah, we'll forget that second slide. So yeah, basically we can store our waste heat in the ground, but we need certain geological formations to do so. So one of them is the Sherwood Sandstone aquifer, which we have in Belfast. So it's a predominant aquifer there. So my research is looking at where we can store waste heat from, you know, as I said, cooling of buildings, industrial processes and stuff like that in the ground. So active thermal energy storage has been used around the world since like the 1960s, so it's not like a new technology. It was initially formed in Shanghai, where they had textile industries that required a lot of cooling during the summer months. So during the winter, they would store waste cold water in their aquifers and then reuse that during the summer for cooling within their buildings. So it's been around for quite a while, and it's growing more and more popular as a lot of countries start to look at their carbon emissions around how they provide heating and cooling.